What do a Hollywood mogul, a chart-topping singer, a socialite tied to a billionaire, a team doctor, and a self-proclaimed prophet have in common? Power. And the same cold ending, a prison door sliding shut. Tonight, we follow 5 high-profile cases to see how they fell, what the courts decided, and what serving time really looks like when the world is watching. Stay with me until the end, because the final comparison may change how you read a headline. Viewer discretion advised. We will discuss allegations of abuse in high-level terms, no graphic detail, respectful throughout. This is a story about power, accountability, and what happens after the verdict. 5 names, 5 institutions, 5 different paths through America's legal system, federal and state courts, juries and judges, appeals and retrials. We will keep this careful, non-graphic, survivor-centered, fact-checked as of late 2024. When a status is contested or on appeal, I'll tell you. Let's begin. Case 1. Harvey Weinstein. Before the courtroom, there was the legend. Harvey Weinstein, a powerful film producer, co-founder of Miramax and the Weinstein Company, known for aggressive Oscar campaigns and for shaping careers. Then journalists began reporting allegations, first in 2017 from the New York Times and the New Yorker. Me Too entered the lexicon of everyday life. The industry changed, and so did the law's attention. The investigations moved quickly. In New York, prosecutors charged Weinstein with felony sex crimes tied to incidents with specific complainants. In Los Angeles, a separate case was prepared, focusing on conduct alleged to have occurred in California. 2 coasts, 2 sets of charges, 1 public reckoning. In 2020, a New York jury convicted Weinstein of a criminal sexual act in the 1st degree and rape in the 3rd degree. He was sentenced to 23 years. In 2022, in Los Angeles, a separate jury convicted him on multiple counts related to a woman identified in court as Jane Doe 1. In early 2023, he received a 16-year sentence from the California court. But the New York case did not end there. In April 2024, New York's highest court overturned the 2020 New York conviction, ruling that the trial court had erred by allowing certain prior acts testimony that was not directly connected to the charged offenses. That decision did not exonerate Weinstein. It ordered a new trial. Prosecutors announced their intent to retry. Pre-trial proceedings are ongoing, and the timing is subject to the court's calendar. The California conviction remains. He is incarcerated under California state custody. And while prison assignments can change, public reports place him within the state system, with transfers when court dates or medical needs arise. His legal team continues to pursue appeals in California. Prosecutors continue to prepare for a New York retrial. The case is not over, but one reality is fixed. He's serving a 16-year sentence in California. Survivors' statements, delivered inside and outside court, centered themes of dignity, safety, and the long shadow of trauma. Many describe the weight of power dynamics. We won't repeat details. We will note the impact. In their words, accountability in court was an important step, not the final one. The cultural aftershock was seismic. Me Too rippled through newsrooms, studios, and boardrooms. Non-disclosure agreements came under scrutiny. Corporate HR policies were rewritten. States re-examined statutes of limitations. Weinstein's case became a symbol and a warning of how systems can fail and then correct. Sometimes in public, sometimes painfully slow. Case 2. R. Kelly. Robert Sylvester Kelly, R. Kelly, was once a dominant force in R&B. Multiple platinum records, stadium tours, a public persona that, for years, seemed untouchable. But behind the music, investigators and journalists documented allegations of manipulation and abuse, especially of minors, stretching back decades. The full weight of federal prosecution arrived in 2019. In 2021, a federal jury in the Eastern District of New York convicted Kelly of racketeering and Mann Act violations. The racketeering charge framed an enterprise, associates, managers, and rules that prosecutors said enabled and concealed crimes. In June 2022, he was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. The court also ordered restitution to certain victims and imposed fines. Meanwhile, in Chicago, a separate federal case proceeded. In September 2022, a jury in the Northern District of Illinois convicted Kelly on multiple counts, including child pornography and enticement. In February 2023, the judge imposed a 20-year sentence, structuring it so that 19 years ran concurrent with the New York sentence and 1 year ran consecutive. Net result: roughly 31 years to serve. Appeals matter. In 2024, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals largely affirmed Kelly's New York conviction, upholding the core of the case. Appeals in the Chicago case are also in various stages, with briefing schedules and opinions developing over time. The appellate system can take years. For now, the sentences stand. Where is he now? Public Bureau of Prisons records have listed Kelly at a federal facility, with transfers occurring over the past few years, including time in North Carolina. High-profile inmates often move for security, medical care, or court appearances. Inside, he is subject to federal rules like any inmate: limited communications, monitored finances, mandatory restitution payments when funds exist, and strict visitation protocols. Impact statements in Kelly's cases described lost years and efforts to rebuild lives. The legal language, racketeering, enticement, pornography, can feel clinical. The human cost is not. Survivors emphasized accountability, community support, and the work of healing. Case 3. Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell was known for her social connections and philanthropic appearances. After the death of financier Jeffrey Epstein in 2019, attention turned sharply toward Maxwell's alleged role in recruiting and grooming young people for exploitation within Epstein's network. The federal case in New York proceeded with witness testimony, flight records, and household staff accounts. In December 2021, a jury in the Southern District of New York convicted Maxwell on several counts, including sex trafficking of a minor and conspiracy. In June 2022, she was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, along with supervised release and financial penalties. She appealed. By 2024, appellate courts had largely upheld the conviction and sentence, rejecting arguments for a new trial. Some collateral claims persisted, but the core judgment stands. Maxwell remains incarcerated in federal custody, with public records placing her at FCI Tallahassee in Florida during this period. The Bureau of Prisons listed a projected release window in the mid-2030s, subject to credits and policy. Survivor testimony was pivotal. The court heard about recruitment patterns, the normalization of control, and the trauma that followed. In sentencing, the judge emphasized the harm, the duration of conduct, and the need for deterrence. Institutions connected to Epstein faced civil suits, internal reviews, and public scrutiny, from banks to universities to nonprofits. Case 4. Larry Nassar. Larry Nassar was once a doctor working with USA Gymnastics and Michigan State University. He treated elite athletes. He traveled with teams. He held trust. In 2016 and 2017, allegations accelerated into criminal charges in both federal and state courts. In late 2017, Nassar pleaded guilty in federal court to possessing child sexual abuse material and was sentenced to 60 years. In Michigan state courts in 2017 and 2018, he pleaded guilty to multiple counts of criminal sexual conduct, receiving sentences that ranged from 40 to 175 years, effectively a lifetime. The hearings were historic. Survivors, more than 100, addressed the court. Their voices shifted culture. Institutional accountability followed. USA Gymnastics leadership changed. The U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee faced investigations. Michigan State University entered settlements and reforms. Congressional hearings examined how complaints were handled. The lesson: systems failed at multiple levels, and reform requires more than one headline. Nassar is in federal custody. In July 2023, he was assaulted in a Florida federal prison. Authorities said he survived. He was treated and later stabilized. High-profile inmates can be targets. They are often placed in protective housing and transferred as needed. Specific housing details change for safety reasons. Survivors' impact statements in Nassar's cases remain a landmark in the courtroom record, speaking to resilience, community, and the hard work of recovery. Judges in multiple hearings emphasized that the sentences reflected both punishment and the need to protect the public. Case 5. Warren Jeffs. Warren Jeffs, leader of the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, projected spiritual authority within an insular community. Law enforcement investigations uncovered patterns of coercion and unlawful conduct involving minors. After earlier proceedings in Utah and a period on the FBI's most wanted list, the decisive case landed in Texas. In 2011, a Texas jury convicted Jeffs of aggravated sexual assault of a child. He was sentenced to life plus 20 years and fined. Evidence included records and audio that prosecutors said documented Jeffs' conduct and authority within the community. He appealed and lost. He remains incarcerated in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Even in prison, reports indicate Jeffs attempted to issue directives to followers. Texas authorities have repeatedly restricted his communications, citing safety and ongoing influence. The community itself has fractured, with ongoing legal actions over property, leadership, and the welfare of members. The central lesson here is not sensational. It is structural. Isolation can shield abuse, and transparency can disrupt it. 5 defendants, different worlds, similar themes. Patterns of grooming and control. Institutions that enabled or ignored warnings. Survivors who persisted. And, eventually, courtrooms where facts were tested, verdicts returned, and sentences pronounced. Now let's compare the systems that processed them. Federal versus state. Weinstein's cases straddle state systems, New York and California. Different evidentiary rules, different appellate paths. The New York conviction was overturned due to evidentiary error, a reminder that appellate courts scrutinize trial fairness, not just outcomes. His California conviction stands, holding him in custody. R. Kelly and Ghislaine Maxwell were tried in federal court, where prosecutors used tools like racketeering statutes and conspiracy charges to describe coordinated conduct across time and state lines. Larry Nassar's sentences exist in both spheres. A 60-year federal sentence plus Michigan state sentences effectively measured in decades to life. Warren Jeffs was tried and sentenced in Texas state court to life plus 20 years. Sentencing differences. Federal guidelines provide advisory ranges. Judges consider factors like harm, leadership role, and obstruction. That's part of how Kelly received 30 years in New York federal court. State sentences vary widely. Michigan's consecutive terms for Nassar ensure he remains incarcerated even if federal terms change. Texas's life plus 20 for Jeffs reflects statutory ranges for his offenses. California's 16-year sentence for Weinstein reflects the counts of conviction and state guidelines. Parole and early release differ. Federal parole largely ended in the 1980s, though inmates can earn limited good time credits. States have their own rules. Some sentences are no parole. Others allow eligibility after a set portion is served. Power and process. Did fame slow accountability? Sometimes. Access to resources can complicate investigations, teams of defense attorneys, PR strategies, and the ability to litigate aggressively. But the core protections apply to all: presumption of innocence, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, the right to appeal. In each of these cases, trials were held, verdicts reached, and appellate courts reviewed legal questions in the light of day. Survivor protections and reforms. States revisited statutes of limitations, allowing more time for prosecution or civil claims. Institutions adopted mandatory reporting rules and independent hotlines. NDAs faced limitations in some jurisdictions, especially those that would silence allegations of unlawful conduct. Athletic governing bodies and universities added safe sport protocols, background checks, and education programs. Media standards evolved, careful language. Trauma-informed reporting and support resources appended to stories. Prison reality for high-profile inmates. A question I hear often is, what does serving time look like for someone famous? The short answer: more isolated, more scrutinized, more complicated. Protective custody. High-profile inmates, including those convicted of offenses against minors, are often placed in protective housing to reduce risk. That can mean fewer communal activities and stricter movement. Transfers, court dates, medical needs, or security assessments can trigger transfers. Health and age. Older defendants face medical issues. When incidents occur, official statements confirm basics, not details. Mail and money. Legal mail is privileged. Other mail is screened. Financial accounts are monitored, and restitution orders can garnish deposits. Communication limits. Recorded calls, approved lists, and, in some cases, special restrictions when authorities determine that communications could enable harm. Appeals and post-conviction reality. Appeals are not retrials of facts. They are reviews of law. Weinstein's New York case illustrates that a legal error can undo a verdict without declaring innocence. A retrial tests the case again, under corrected rules. Kelly's partial appellate affirmance shows how higher courts parse complex records count by count. Maxwell's appeal largely failed. Her conviction stands. Nassar's sentences focus post-conviction on conditions and institutional accountability. Jeffs' appeals failed long ago. His sentence is final. Look, here's why this matters. Our system promises due process to defendants and dignity to survivors. It's not always swift. It can be painful. But these 5 cases show that with persistence, investigative journalism, and institutional reform, even powerful people face accountability. And when they do, the work continues, supporting survivors, improving safeguards, and maintaining vigilance. Quick case-by-case recap. Harvey Weinstein, 2020. New York conviction overturned in 2024. Retrial planned. 2022. Los Angeles conviction stands. Sentenced to 16 years. R. Kelly, 2021 federal conviction, 30 years. 2022 Chicago federal conviction, total of roughly 31 years. Ghislaine Maxwell, 2021 conviction, 20 years. Appeals largely denied, projected release in the mid-2030s. Larry Nassar, 60 years federal plus Michigan sentences of 40 to 175 years in federal custody. Warren Jeffs, 2011 Texas conviction, life plus 20 years. Communications restricted. The human thread. The legal milestones are precise. Indictments, evidentiary rulings, jury notes, sentencing ranges. The human thread is more fragile. Survivors choosing whether to speak, families navigating shame and scrutiny, investigators building cases across decades, journalists sifting rumor from record. If you followed these stories, you know the law can correct itself. It can also learn. One insight before we close: the shock factor. In comparing sentences, one detail surprises many. Federal time is often harder in the sense that parole is rare. Kelly's Chicago sentence added just 1 consecutive year, favoring administrative efficiency. Meanwhile, state cases can stack time in ways that make a total number feel almost abstract, like Nassar's 40 to 175 years. Different systems, different math. Same message: accountability measured in years. Resources and responsibility. If you or someone you know needs support, consider reaching out to verified resources, national hotlines for survivors, local advocacy centers, trauma-informed legal aid. We'll link reputable, verified organizations in the description. Use them. Share them. Justice isn't a headline. It's a record, written in testimonies, verdicts, and years to be served. For survivors, the story doesn't end at sentencing, and neither should ours. If you found value here, subscribe, comment respectfully, and share this with someone who cares about accountability without spectacle. We'll keep following the appeals, the retrials, and the reforms, carefully, factually, and with empathy. Thank you for watching.